start. So, hello and happy new year to you all, and welcome to another rip-roaring episode of Beyond the South Stand, a Beyond the Barclay offshoot where we speak to fans of opposing teams, chat about the connection with their club and their thoughts on the upcoming clash with the mighty Norwich City. So some of you might be wondering who this silk-tongued maestro you can currently hear. Here he is, and what have I done with Jez? Jez is still alive, aren't you, Jez?
Yeah, I'm still here, yeah.
My name's Morgan Hewitt. I've been on a few Beyond the Barclay episodes over the past few months and was kindly asked to become a more permanent fixture. So I think primarily so Jez could just put his feet up. So here I am.
Which I literally am doing at the moment. I'm about to put the darts on, so yeah, I'm just letting you go ahead and speak to this fine gentleman we've got on. So yeah, you're doing a good job so far. So let's.
I'd like to think so.
Let's strap in.
So without further ado, let's meet this week's fan, Lincoln Pigman, Brighton Hove Albion fan. Lincoln, thanks for coming on. So did you just want to tell us a little bit more about yourself and your affiliation with Brighton?
Yeah, so I'm a season ticket holder at Brighton. I've been following the club, going to home and away games for 3 seasons now. I started watching just at the end of the Potter era, so I am a relatively recent convert. But my story is that I didn't really watch club football at all until quite late, until my mid-20s, and it was It was right around the time that Brighton were finishing 9th in that last full season under Potter that I heard about Brighton, realized what tumultuous history they'd had, how much adversity they'd overcome to even get back in the Premier League after years in the wilderness, how close it came to just ceasing to exist due to financial difficulties, exiting the Football League, and the kind of style that they were now known for playing, and just the underdog story. And most people, I feel, if they don't support their local, so to speak. I live in London. It tends to be because Manchester United won so many things when I was a kid, or Liverpool had that that manager, that player. I'm a late convert to football altogether, and the Brighton story and the Brighton style just won me over. So I've been going for a few seasons now.
That's good. That's good to hear. You don't sound like you're from around these parts. So how did you kind of sort of come about to sort of fall into club football then, out of interest?
Yeah, I've been living in the UK for about 10 years now, actually. And it took me a while in that time to get around to watching football. But I'm half American, half Russian, actually. I grew up in Russia. Okay. Came here for university way back when. So yeah, football was everywhere in Russia too when I was growing up there, but it just didn't catch on with me the way it has here. So
good. It's good to hear. It's always good to hear a different kind of take on how kind of people fell into it. I'm going to preface the first question with a bit of context story. So the first question is about Brighton's journey to becoming a consistent Premier League force. I mean, it's been pretty remarkable, as you touched on then. But I have a confession that I actually about 10 years ago, I used to be in a band I used to play music in London with a friend of mine who hopefully will listen to this, so he'll be smirking right now. And we used to go to these practice rooms in Hackney, and there was an assistant there. He was a Brighton fan, and it was round about the time that Jez, was it? When did Houghton go to Brighton? Do you remember?
Yeah, I can't remember. It must have been after he was with us, mustn't it? So when would it have been? About 2015, 16, something like that?
Yeah, something like that. And I remember saying to that lad, his name was Alex. I was like, you've got Chris Houghton. Good luck staying up in the Championship with him. I think you guys were kind of near the bottom of the league at that point, but I have to eat my hat now, don't I? So, what do you think has been key to the club's success, I guess, over the recent years that you've sort of been following them?
Well, I mean, he's been around for a longer than that, but really, it's Tony Bloom. It's our owner. are very lucky to have a local fan who cares about the club and, won't be tempted to sell it to the first bidder who comes their way. Let's say an American investor. Sorry. His family's been involved for generations in the club. He's generous. We like to, it's very fashionable nowadays to talk about financial sustainability in football. Everyone's being docked points. Everyone's being investigated for this and that. The Newcastle fans like to talk about Mike Ashley and how, fine, he was a responsible steward of the club, but he didn't really put much money in it. Tony Bloom's probably never going to get back the money that he's put in the club. We have the stadium we have because of his money. We've been able to reach this point where we can actually sustain our transfers through player sales because of the patience and the sustained engagement on his behalf. And he's ambitious. Yeah, he wants a lot more for Brighton than just staying up every season. He actually has a tactical philosophy that he expects the club's managers to all adhere to, and that's great because it means that if we do sack a manager, if we part ways, there's continuity. You're not changing style completely overnight, and that trickles down to the academy. Our youngsters know to play the Brighton way, but of course, beyond Tony Bloom, all the fans and activists who fought for the club to stay in existence in the 90s, and then fought for a ground, for a new ground to be built in the 2000s. All those people deserve credit as well, because from resisting the sale of Goldstone and pushing the Labour government to approve the Amex, it's been a very long journey here.
Yeah,
I think if I can interject, Morgan, if you don't mind, I think I always remember when I went to watch Brighton Norwich in the Premier League a few years ago, and we went to it was like almost a bit like a carvery place before the game, and I think you know what I'm going to say here, Lincoln, but we looked out in their sort of beer garden type thing, and that was where Brighton used to play. It was a bit of an athletics track, and it was interesting to see how you've moved from somewhere like that that's a sort of a temporary built stadium to where you are now in what's probably one of the better stadiums.
Obviously I never went, but I've met former players and it was a terrible place to play. and then beside the Wifting, we spent 2 years at Gillingham, and there were away games that were closer than home games at the Gillingham Stadium in Gillingham, so it was pretty dire.
Yeah, I've been to that Gillingham Stadium a few times. I probably shouldn't go again.
Priestfield, right?
Huh? Yes.
Yeah.
So I guess kind of moving on to the next question, you sort of touched on it there. And forgive me if I get the surname wrong here. I'm going to struggle with it. How do you feel about Fabian? Is it Hürzeler? Is that how you pronounce it? Hürzeler? How's it said? Hürzeler. As the Brighton's new manager, I mean, he's 31 years old, making me feel old. What do you make of his style and the impact he's had on the team so far? I mean, I sort of have been paying loose attention to the Premier League, and I've seen a couple of games where I was like, Brighton are nailed on to win this, and then you sort of haven't, and you've sort of...
That's the Brighton way. We'll get into how the season itself is going, I think, a bit later, but look, Tony Bloom hasn't put a foot wrong when it comes to managerial appointments since Sammy Hippiett, who was our last manager before Chris Hughton came in. And like you pointed out, he's 31. This was the headline everywhere when he was appointed, and for most people, that was sooner a cause for concern than celebration. He had no top flight managerial experience. He had been coaching since 22. He stopped playing fairly early on in his career, and his last achievement before coming here was leading St. Pauli in the second Bundesliga to the title, to promotion to Bundesliga. But St. Pauli had actually finished fifth the 2 preceding seasons. So, and again, sorry, but it is less of an achievement than back-to-back promotions for Ipswich, let's say. And actually, I don't mean to rub salt in your wounds, but we by all accounts, we looked at McKenna before we looked at Hürzeler, or at least we looked at them at the same time. I think the other thing about Hürzeler that made fans a bit apprehensive was, for a while under the last guy, Roberto De Zerbi, we had it pretty well. It was pretty thrilling football. He led us to sixth place in his first season. We qualified for Europe for the first time ever, which was unbelievable. And then the following season, we made it all the way to the round of 16 in the Europa League. He left by mutual consent at the end of last season. But the thing that I try to remember is that in the second half of the last season, our form dropped off dramatically. We won 4 and drew 6 of our last 19 league matches. We lost 5 games by 3 or more goals, including at Luton. I mean, it was incredible. In the last Europa League, in a round of 16, we were beaten 4-1. 4 of those goals were shipped away at Roma. Injuries were a massive part of this. We had probably the worst injury list of any team in the league, but it especially concentrated in just a few key wide positions. And we love our wing play, so it just killed us. But the reality is that De Zerbi also just got found out. He didn't want to play a different way. He didn't have a plan B. And the thing I liked about Hürzeler when I heard about his appointment was, okay, he likes playing with keeping the ball. He likes sophisticated football, but he is tactically flexible.
Yeah.
More defensively sound than De Zerbi. I mean, if you look at St. Pauli, they conceded the fewest goals of any team in the league in the second Bundesliga last season. They kept 10 clean sheets all season. We kept only 6. I know it's a very different league, the Premier League, but all the same, Hürzeler had a reputation for prioritizing set pieces, offensive and defensive. De Zerbi basically thought they were a distraction. He completely ignored them. We might as well not have had a set piece coach.
That's interesting you mentioned that, because
actually, I think you took our set piece coach, which we were all very happy about.
So, and we've been conceding from set pieces throughout this season, and I think it's one of our biggest weakest links, isn't it, Jez?
Yeah, I think have we not conceded 12 from corners this year, which is it's not the highest. It's perhaps
by contrast, we have someone who came with Hürzeler who does cover set pieces, but I think his main remit is goalkeeping. We had not conceded from a set piece until December, until last month. So we were one of the last teams, I think, to concede from a set piece goal, to concede a set piece goal. So that tells you, how well that shift worked for us. The other thing about De Zerbi was he was obsessed with slow build up. We scored 1 goal on the counter all of last season, 1 goal in the league. We have pace in the team, especially the wingers, the wing backs, but we would just make it so easy for the opposition to get back into the box and crowd it. Most of the games, at least, especially in the second half of the season, you'd find us just passing the ball back and forth, along this arc of disappointment, until they won back possession and broke, or, sending in speculative crosses that just get, saved every time.
Yeah.
Keeper. So yeah, it was pretty awful, at its worst. But yeah, under Hürzeler, he doesn't mind sacrificing possession a bit. He doesn't mind ceding control a bit if it means we attack more rapidly. We play off from the back and we still get in trouble. We've actually, made, I think, 8 errors leading to goals, which is as many as Ipswich and Man United. Only 2 teams have made more, I think. So we're still making a lot of errors, which, maybe you guys will exploit. But at the same time, we're really keen on the high press, on counter pressing. We play the offside trap really effectively. I think maybe more effectively than Villa, who were synonymous with the offside trap last season. We still give away chances. I think we give away really high quality chances when we do. But the defense record is definitely better than last season. And, it is a team in transition. He's a manager who's learning the trade, so it will get better. But, all this to say, I am more positive than negative about the appointment. He is so young that inevitably he can only get better. The players that we sign, and we'll talk more about recruitment later, are so young that they can only get better. So I'm not really worried. We've only lost 5 in all competitions this season, and only one of those teams was from outside the Big Six. It was unfortunately Palace. So it could have gone better. And we haven't lost any games by more than 2 goals, which I, mentioned was not the case last season. There were a lot of, terrible defeats last season.
I think it's always a mark of respect, I suppose, might be the best word of using, is when clubs like Norwich look at Brighton and think, oh, what are they doing that's, why can they sign a player for, I don't know, 4 or 5 million and sell him on for 120 million, looking at Caicedo at Chelsea that went on. And I think it must be a real sort of feather in your cap to think, it's a really, really well run club there. And, I think this is the sort of the benchmark that clubs like Norwich are looking at. So, as I said, it can only be a good thing. You quite rightly said it could only be a good thing that you've got young managers and young players coming through, because it's all been done before by Brighton, so it can be done again.
Yeah, I mean, it's like.
Go ahead.
Oh, go on. Sorry.
No, it's fine.
I mean, I think that there's definitely echoes in everything you were just saying then. I was like nodding my head and going, that's kind of what we're doing now, like a league down with Hoff and the squad that we've got. I was like, I recognize this, the sound of this. We're sort of in that transition period, and we are trying to find our feet a little bit. And I think that the one thing that, people have said, oh, well, Daniel Farke, he was the epitome of what we needed, and I'm not seeing that Hoff's methods are that different. And I was one of those people, but I'm starting to see a little bit more of a plan B when plan A fails. And if you don't get, people like Russ Martin lose their jobs because they can't adapt and they can't adopt a new playing style. So I'm glad to hear that you're in a position to kind of have someone as head coach in that position.
Yeah, it's funny. Last season, by the end, we were all begging for a plan B, and I think unfortunately, I went to a lot of games at the end of that season that I wish I hadn't attended, and I only remember one where we showed any signs of having a plan B, and it was a 1-1 draw at Newcastle. But by then it was too late, really, for it to make any difference. But the funny thing is, going into this season, we have been so tactically flexible that we have fans going, what is our identity? What is our style? I don't understand what we're trying to do. Like, well, it's because if we only play one way, then pretty quickly we get found out. So it's a teething moment.
Yeah, for sure. Me and Jez are sort of going through that, aren't we, at the moment, buddy, with our fans, with our family.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a real need, I suppose, in my opinion, for a bit of patience. And it's not going to be, it was never ever going to be an overnight thing with our limited budget, with our, the size and the stature of the club that we're currently at. It was never going to happen overnight. And I think, as I say, I think we look at teams like Brighton and we look at teams like perhaps Brentford and think that's the benchmark. That's what can be achieved. Not just to stay in that league and, be happy to finish 17th, but then to go and push on a little bit further and perhaps have that European adventure that Brighton had, which we probably will talk about later on. But, 100% Morgan.
Yeah. I mean, it sort of leads on nicely to the next question. So, Brighton's become famous for uncovering and developing top talent. We touched on it a second ago. Why do you think the club's recruitment strategy has been so successful, and which players stand out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned this before, and maybe I didn't, but this is another legacy of Tony Bloom's ownership of the club. But we really rely heavily on data analytics. I don't know exactly how true this is, but the other month there was a report that we'd actually made cuts to our traditional scouting team, which is a sign that we feel very confident relying less on in-person scouting and more on the the proprietary databases that Tony has developed for his businesses. But the fact that we rely on data means we're less likely to chase shiny objects. Yeah. We're less likely to be rinsed by other clubs. We usually have replacements ready in the event of departures. That's true of managers as well as players. And that's all why people usually have not heard of the players we sign when we sign them. Even Hürzeler was kind of an unknown to most people outside Germany. You never really read about us spending beyond our means or coming to regret big money signings. I mean, if you just look at last season, the 2 players that we signed last season, who a lot of players came to regret, coming to the club, were Mahmoud Dahoud, defensive midfielder from Dortmund, who came on a free, and Ansu Fati from Barcelona, who came on loan. So both of those players are off our books now. We don't have Romelu Lukaku, who we just can't get rid of. And in terms of fees that we pay for these players, it's true, we are increasingly being charged the Brighton tax because of reputation for flipping players. Clubs are more aggressive in seeking sell-on clauses, but at the end of the day, what we're spending is still peanuts by the standards of a big club.
Yeah.
Big clubs, we're financially healthy, but we're challenging for Europe. That's a really difficult balance to strike. This kind of went under the radar because of, more exciting stories, in the transfer market. But in the summer, we spent 231 million euros. That's the highest net spend of any club in the world. The reason we did it last summer and not at any other point recently was because we had just come off of some big sales with Caicedo going to Chelsea for 150 million, among others. And the way that the profitability and sustainability rules work is there are 3-year periods in which you can lose a certain amount. And if we wanted to make the most of the sales we've made in the preceding seasons, that summer was the time to do it. And it happened to be not just a necessary time to do it, but an opportune one because other clubs were sensitive financially. Other clubs were desperate to offload players so that they weren't found in breach of PSR. And so we ended up taking Yankuba Mente, who was a winger from the Gambia, off the Newcastle fans. Kieran Dewsbury Hall nearly came to Leicester. He'd actually, I believe, done his medical. He was in Brighton when he got the phone call from Chelsea, and now he's Danny Drinkwater 2.0 over there. So that worked out well for him. But, that's sort of the principle, and that's why it works so well. In terms of our best Premier League era signings, there are, different categories of players that you can think about. We've signed quite a few experienced players for peanuts, or even as free agents. You look at Joel Veltman, who's still with the squad. He came from Ajax for less than $1 million back in 2020. Nowadays, some pundits in the Netherlands ask why he's not playing for the national team. Danny Welbeck, he's got 6 goals this season already. He joined us on a free in 2020. Pascaros, 25, so maybe not so old. When he joined us, he was our first Premier League signing back in 2017, but he came for $3 million. He was 33 when he left in the summer to go to Dortmund. We sold him for $8 million. He scored and assisted 84 goals in all competitions, over the course of his Brighton career. So that was an amazing signing. But again, it was, one of those players that, we gambled on at the time, and it paid off for us. But obviously, there are the more well-known signings like Caicedo and McAllister, Cucurella, that have ended up leaving for a lot of money. Some of those players we were able to replace more effectively. Some of them left a bit sooner than we expected. But in terms of some of the players who are still with us, obviously Matoma, João Pedro, who came from Watford, Carlos Baliba, who is probably arguably having his breakthrough season right now, Jan-Paul van Hecke, who's spent 1 season on loan Blackburn before breaking into the first team here. And that's none of those players came this summer when we spent more than 200 million. So it's looking pretty good. And I mean, just on our reputation as a selling club, I think it's an oversimplification. We don't just buy to sell. We do want to reap rewards of those players' performances. We mentioned already that they come so young that they are coming to develop with us. They're Premier League ready in that they end up playing the Premier League one way or another, but they wouldn't walk into the starting lineup at City or Liverpool. But I think we are trying to take a firmer position on some of these players and say, look, we are going to keep you until it makes sense for us as well as for you. You can't just down tools as some players have done in the past. But obviously, we'll see how that plays out this month. We'll see how that plays out in the summer. I think, if you look at what the tabloids have said, Evan Ferguson might like to go out on loan because of his lack of minutes, but it sounds like we'd like him to stay, so that'll be a test.
I forget that you guys have Danny Welbeck. I always forget that. I randomly checked out some of his stats the other day, and I was like, my God, like he's had a purple patch with Brighton, considering where he came from. But yeah, it's good to. I think it's interesting for a lot of neutral fans to see Brighton's recruitment and how you flip players and how you progress players like McAllister and going to Liverpool and seeing the top 10 and Brighton sort of like creeping up the league. I think for the neutral, it certainly makes it more interesting rather than the usual suspects within the top 4 to 6. So, all power to you, brother.
Thanks.
So it's a Norwich City podcast, and what would it be without a comment on Norwich? So what are your thoughts? Well, I mean, what are your thoughts on Norwich as a club? That's a loaded question, Jez, if there ever was one.
I like that one.
And do you have any standout memories of matches between Brighton and Norwich?
As it happens, I work with a Norwich fan.
Brilliant.
And we check in every so often on our respective clubs. I like Forup. I mean, he seems like an exciting manager. I take your point about him being a work in progress.
Yeah, for sure.
But I mean, on current form, it's harder to visualize, but realistically, you should be in the playoffs again this season. So, as far as our encounters are concerned, I mean, it has been a few years since we played each other in the Premier League. Our last game was pure Potter. I think we had 31 shots to your 6 and most of the possession, and it finished goalless.
Is that when Sargent missed the open goal?
Sorry?
That game?
I think that was the previous game, wasn't it? That was the previous. That was because
we missed the penalty. I think Neil Mope missed the penalty in that game. So we could have taken all 3 points, but I mean that was a frustrating one. But I think the game that most Brighton fans will actually remember is from 2017 because we had just secured promotion to Premier League and then showed up on the beach at Carrow Road and lost 2-0 through 2 own goals by our keeper, David Stockton.
I was going to bring that up. It was Luke. Was it Pritchard who scored those goals?
Well, yeah, he had the shot, didn't he? But neither were his goals because it's sort of like one of those ones where it hit the crossbar and went off Stockdale's pass.
But it was the same goal twice, wasn't it?
Yes.
And it was like within the first 20 minutes. It was over. I mean, those last few games of the season, I wasn't following back then, but I know that it's just a massive frustration because we were pipped of the title by Newcastle by like 1 point, and we had like 3 games in which to finish the business, and that was the first one that we screwed up.
Can I just add? I'm looking at the stats of that game now, and so we won 2-0. We had 7 shots that day, but 0 were on target. That's the most Norwich City stat you're ever going to see in your life. That we won 2-0, but we had 0 shots on target.
So true. Well, along come Norwich.
Yeah.
Lewis Dunk and Solly March both started that day, I think. So I'm sure. I don't think they lose any sleep over it at this point. But maybe next month, next week, we can see if they're motivated to win this time.
Brilliant.
Okay, so, and I don't mean to rub salt into the wound, but with no European commitments this season, how do you think Brighton can leverage that sort of off time to improve their Premier League performance? That sounds a really professional question, Jez. We sound like we know what we're doing.
We do. Which is good, really, isn't it? I suppose going into it.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, I forgot to mention, I do hope that Shane Duffy and Ashley Barnes show up for a reunion, because Barnes doesn't score for shit anymore. And
you're telling us.
And Duffy's just Duffy's a legend, isn't he? So I hope we get to reunite again.
Shane Duffy will certainly be playing. I think Ashley Barnes will probably be an appearance off the bench. But Duffy, it's interesting you say because we were probably going to be speaking about the shared legends later on, but he had a really good game yesterday against Luton. 3 or 4 really sort of goal saving blocks.
Nice.
and did really well. So yeah, I think he's had a really, really good season with us.
He served us really well. Yeah.
Yeah.
No nonsense defender. I mean, I know preempting the conversation about legends, and I will get to the question about no Europe. Thank you. But Billy Gilmore, I think, is
Oh, here we go.
someone that you guys probably never think about anymore. But he ended up being kind of a central key player with us. I mean, last season he was one of 2 first choice central midfielders. So he ended up going to Italy in the summer, going to Napoli to play under Conte. But he had a good spell with us too.
Didn't with Norwich, to be honest.
It wasn't so good, was it?
No, it sort of, he came with obviously came with a very good reputation off the back of an excellent Euros campaign with Scotland, but it just never really worked. I don't know whether that was the way we set up, just didn't really adhere to the way that Gilmore played, probably more to the point, and he wasn't able to adapt at his tender age. It never worked at Norwich, and I think in all intents and purposes he should have been a really big player for us, but just didn't work, did it, Morgan?
No, there's a lot of players that transfer window that just didn't work. It was I think it was too much of a change of style.
Yeah.
4-3-3 that it was never going to work, and I do think that we hamstrung Farke in that, and it was a sliding doors kind of transfer window that cost him his job and I think the last 3 seasons in the Championship. But we are where we are.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to repeat that question. We went on for a bit of a tangent, but no European commitments, how do you think Brighton can leverage that to improve their Premier League performance?
Yeah, I mean, well, look, no European commitments. We spent more than 230 million euros in the summer. Well, we should probably be a bit higher than 10th at this point.
Yeah.
But a month ago we were second. We were second very briefly. I think we'd just beaten City and Bournemouth, and then unfortunately drew with Southampton, which kicked off a pretty terrible month for us. But, you alluded to this earlier, games that you think we should win. It's in our DNA to screw those games up. It's in our DNA to slip on those banana peels, because some of it is a low block. Some of it is the low block. We really struggle against the low block. But, Southampton, they did not play the low block. They really brought the game to us. And I think the issue with having such a young squad is game management is not really there. And also, when you've just beaten City, when you've just beaten Bournemouth, who, that wouldn't have meant much some years ago, a few years ago, but they're a really good team now. Mm-hmm. When you've managed to come back from 2-0 down against Tottenham to win 3-2, I suspect you struggle to motivate yourself for those games.
Yeah.
And you probably don't pay the opposition the respect they deserve. So, there are definitely fans who are dissatisfied with where we are today, given the way we started the season. We also beat Newcastle and Man United, drew away at Arsenal. But, at the beginning of the season, when people would ask me where I thought we'd finish at the end of the season, I was saying 7th or 8th, because I did think it was going to be a transition season. I wasn't expecting, miracles from Hürzeler. If you ask me what, the different, definitions of success might be, I would have said qualifying for Europe again is the dream. Top half finish is the aim, staying up the bare minimum, because, even with our, decline in form last season, we could have had a top half finish. Very late in the game, as of early April, we were still looking at, I think, 7th. And right at the end there, it just got away from us. But I suppose Hürzeler is kind of a victim of his own initial success. No one expected him to do as well as he did when he started off. We had a very brutal initial run of fixtures, and he did manage really well. Like I said, we just have to learn how to deal with those bottom of the table teams, but that's been an issue for ages. Besides the Southampton game, we gave them their first point on the road. We gave Brentford their second point on the road all season. We had 2-0 leads right at the end of normal time against Wolves and Leicester, and drew 2-2 in both of those games. If you look at the summer spend, we brought in a lot of wingers, a lot of attacking midfielders. We signed one defender, and that happens to be Ferdi Kadioglu, who can play on both wings as a wing back or a winger. But you can read between the lines. He's more attacking than defending, which is true of a lot of our fullbacks. We should have probably signed a new center back, and we were in for one from PSV, but PSV wouldn't let him go. The other day we were playing Villa. We had our two first choice center backs both on 4 yellows. If they had both gotten a fifth, we would enter our next game against Arsenal with Igor Julio, who is a left-sided center back, and he's probably our third choice center back, and Joel Veltman, who is a right back who can also play right center back, available. I think Adam Webster, who's a former Ipswich man, might be fit on the weekend too, and he might play next week, but it would have been a bit dire. So that was definitely an oversight. And even if you look at some of our attacking positions, like the number 9 position, of our 3 strikers, we've got one who's in form this season, Danny Welbeck. He's injured at the moment. I don't know when he'll be back. Evan Ferguson has been struggling to find his form since scoring a hat-trick against Newcastle early last season. He's also had an operation in that time, and I think illness. João Pedro is brilliant, but he's more of a 10 than a 9, and I think he's found it a bit frustrating playing in the 9 position recently. And yeah, I mean, the injuries are still an issue, as I've already mentioned. Right now, our injury list is Welbeck, Ferguson, Pervis Estupiñán, who's a left back, Kadioglu, Matt Sweefer, a new signing from the Netherlands, defensive midfielder, Jack Hinchot and James Milner, who are obviously central midfielders, can both play at right back. So that's a lot of absences for what a squad that should on paper have a lot of depth. And finally, for midfield, I would say is unsettled because we had 2 consecutive summer cycles where we just completely ripped out our midfield. The first time it was Caicedo and McAllister. The second time it was Pascal Gross and Billy Gilmore. So essentially, we just keep chopping and changing in midfield, and that affects how affects our results, affects our play. And I mentioned Carlos Baliba. He's having a breakthrough season. He's brilliant. I hope we can keep him in the summer. But all the same, those understandings and partnerships in midfield aren't really there yet.
Yeah,
I would be surprised if informally Hürzeler could name it a best 11, because I don't think he knows what it is yet. So, last season, the, rotation was insane, but it was because De Zerbi had this notion that, that's what you have to do when you're playing in Europe. This season, we're not in Europe, and the rotation is still there, partly because of injuries, but partly because he's got so many new players, new and old players, and he doesn't know who really is best for her respective position. So, yeah, that's kind of the situation we're in.
I think you can. I mean, I think the Southampton game, Southampton fighting for their lives. I think it's probably too little, too late for them now. But it's a topsy-turvy league this season. It's again great for the neutral. I'm loving it. Watching the Premier League and kind of like where you're at. But you say bottom half of the table clubs. What, like Man United? Spurs.
I'm looking forward to Man United away. It's if you ask me, where's our next win coming from in the league? I think Man United is the state. Because honestly, Ipswich, they've just come off of a 2-0 win at home over Chelsea, so no promises there. Arsenal, we for a while there we were kind of the bogey team for Arsenal. That's not been the case recently, and they have absences, we have absences. We'll see how it goes on the weekend. But yeah, I feel pretty good about Man United away.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not surprised. I think there's a fair few clubs rubbing their hands with glee. Isn't it Liverpool, Man United this weekend?
Yeah. I've tripled up on Liverpool players in my FPL.
I'm excited to see that.
Yeah. It'll be the sort of game where Man United will go and put a performance in and probably get a result. It's crazy.
Probably.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I reckon it's one of those games where we're 4-0 up at halftime and then they just don't make an effort in the second half and stay that way. Yeah.
True. Could go that way as well, to be fair, yeah.
I've got one last curveball question, Lincoln. So, do you know pantomime in the UK at all? You do. So, with it being pantomime season still, who has been your panto villain of the season so far? Who has been your donkey, and who has been your fairy godmother? So, villain, donkey, fairy godmother.
Well, that's a good question.
Is it?
It feels a bit like Shag, Marry, Kill. And being on a podcast, I'm worried about who I call a donkey because I do love everybody who plays for us. But well, look, I'll say as a villain, there's the more obvious choice and the less obvious choice. I think De Zerbi has he kind of thrown his toys out the pram around the end of his tenure with us, and he has bigger issues to deal with at Marseille than relitigating his time at Brighton. But I think he hasn't handled the aftermath very well. He's given a few interviews complaining about being treated unfairly there, and between that and signing Mason Greenwood and some other wrong-uns at Marseille, I think he's kind of destroyed his reputation.
Jonathan Rowe being one of those wrong-uns.
Yeah.
Who? Exactly. A former player decided the first game of this season that he, for Norwich, that he didn't want to play for us anymore.
John Rowe, yeah.
Within 2 hours of kickoff. So,
I remember that happening. Yeah, that was a bit unseemly.
Yeah, but carry on. Sorry.
Yeah, and I mean the less serious answer is Nuno Espirito Santo, because he's doing with Forest what I would wish we were doing right now. They're in the table where I wish we were right now with, I'm not going to say similar spend because their owners have spent a lot more money than we have over the last few years. But realistically, we could be doing what Forest are doing. But we'll see. We'll see where it ends up at the end of the season. With Donkey, again, I hate this part because no one's a donkey yet. But I would say the donkey moment of the season has been being 2-1 up against Wolves in injury time with a 4v1 in their third.
Yeah. And
Matt Sweefer, bless his heart, passes it directly to a Wolves player, the only Wolves player in their third.
I remember it.
Sends an incredible cross all the way to the edge of our box, and it ends 2-2.
Mm-hmm.
So I love you, Matt. You're not a donkey, and you're going to come good. So that was a donkey moment. I don't know why we were all bombing upfield at that point in the game, but
when you should just run it into the corner, basically,
yeah. But that's fairy godmother. Well, I don't know. Well, how would you describe the fairy godmother?
I guess just like a knight in shining armor. Who's been a savior so far this season?
Well, I have said Carlos Baliba several. I have mentioned him several times because I think he changed his games. He changed the City game when we were 1-0 down and won that 2-1. But gosh, I mean, I think honestly Danny Welbeck, because
classic.
You need a striker who scores. You need a striker with shooting boots, and he's the only one we've got this season, really, reliably. So I hope he comes back sooner rather than later. I hope you guys get to see him in action next week.
You don't mean that.
Honestly, between the dressing room leadership and him actually making a massive difference on the pitch this season, I think he's been brilliant. He's definitely made the difference points wise.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I guess then there's only one thing left to ask. Predictions, score predictions.
Yeah.
Right.
Everyone loves that. Go on then. I'll start with you, Lincoln.
Yeah. Well, look, guys.
Go easy.
I'm gonna say 3-1, just because I don't think we can keep a clean sheet, but better. What's good news for us is that you can't either.
No shit.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was saying this to my workmate. I mean, it's crazy. The disparity between your attacking numbers and your defending numbers is just. How do you have fewer clean sheets than Portsmouth?
Because we're Norwich.
Yeah.
I know that part of the answer is who you have defending for you. I mean, with all due respect to, Grant Hanley. I don't probably should not be playing for this Norwich side, given the style.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. And he played the first game of the season where we lost 2-0 and we haven't really seen him since. So you're completely right in what you say. And, the managers highlighted that, and to his credit, it sounds like I'm digging Hanley out, but I'm not. It's that he's got better players in front of him that now have taken the lead, I suppose. So yeah, 100% you're right there.
Yeah, I don't know what you make of Gunn either, but I see him a lot for playing for Scotland. He's diabolical in goal.
I think he's he's on the downside of the hill now. I think we've seen the best of his years, to be honest. I mean, I could be wrong.
I think the thing with Gunn is if he wasn't Brian Gunn's son, I think he'd get a lot more stick. So I'm not sure if you're aware, Lincoln, but we had a player called Brian Gunn in the 90s. Big legend for us. Played in our famous win against Bayern Munich. Played in those first few sort of Premier League seasons. But he's his son. And, I don't mean any disrespect by this comment. But I think if he wasn't, I think he'd get a lot more stick from the Norwich fans.
Yeah, fair enough.
Jez,
so 3-1. I'm guessing 3-1.
So 3-1.
If it's a bad day for us, I could see you, making it a tense one at the end. I would be mortified if this went to penalty. So
we're quite good at doing that, aren't we? Well, we used to be dragging out teams to pens. So, Jez, what's your prediction?
I'm going to go for the classic Desmond 2-2 after extra time penalty shootout. We somehow managed to squeak it on the penalty shootout. So yeah, I'm going ultra positive. It's as positive as I can be, at least 2-2.
I love it 2-2 as 2-2 as an ultra positive prediction.
Exactly. That's about as positive as I can be, to be fair. So yeah.
I'm going to go for 3-0 to Brighton because although we've been playing okay at home, I think you're just too good. You're just too good for a team that's in transition. And I've seen some of our recent games. That's all. I'm not usually so negative, but that's just kind of where my head's at.
I think the thing that works in our favor is we don't tend to get knocked out of the FA Cup by lower division sides. It's the League Cup. I mean, let's not talk about the League Cup. The League Cup, we seem to never be ready when it comes around at the beginning of the season.
No one cares for it. That's basically
you know what? You say that, but we basically never won anything. So it'd be nice to win even a League Cup.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think I'm not saying that we'd be happy to be relegated in the same season we won the League Cup, but I think a lot of our fans would probably take a 17th place finish and a League Cup, if it meant we could just have one good day out at Wembley.
Yeah, I think it would be nice for us to win something one day in my lifetime, but it I'll probably be dead by the time that happens.
Mm.
Okay, it's been an absolute pleasure.
On that note.
Yeah, moving on. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Lincoln. It's been
thanks, Lincoln.
Yeah, it's been absolutely amazing, and thanks for taking the time to come into the depths of Norwich City podcast land.
Mm. And please do share it with all of your Brighton friends as well, and I'll get it posted on some of the forums as well. So be a good listen. Are you going to the game, Lincoln?
Yeah, I am. I'm coaching it from London.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I hope is it your first time to Norwich or Carrow Road?
It is, yeah. I'm looking forward to it. And,
well, I hope you have a wonderful time.
If you guys are going, we should get a drink.
I wish I was. Unfortunately, I'm not able to make that game, but are you going, Morgan?
No, I'm not either, because I'll be back. I'm moving back to London on Saturday, so I won't be going. I did think about it, but no, unfortunately not.
perhaps we can grab a beer afterwards and dissect it.
Yeah, absolutely.
In London or something. I'm sort of relatively close to London as well, so yeah, that'd be good. Thank you very much, gentlemen. It's been an absolute pleasure. Really enjoyed it.
No worries, man. Thank you for letting me. Thank you for allowing my participation in leading the charge.
I think you've done really well. So there'll be as long as you're happy, there'll be plenty more of it. So yeah, all good.
What have I done to myself? Cool. Okay. Thanks for you both, and that's been another wicked episode of Beyond the South Stand.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, thanks once again, guys.
No.
We are available on all social media channels, including Facebook, X, and Instagram. Thanks for listening, and tune in soon.